What did your parents tell you about yourself before you might have been able to form a complete idea on the situation yourself?
My parents, like, I can think of a couple of very distinctive things they've told me throughout my life. Like, I don't think they were really, like, vocal about it, except for when I started school, they were like, you know, you can't, you know, you're not allowed to fight. Like, you know, you should be above that. But the only time that you can fight is if anyone calls you the N-word. If anyone calls you the N-word, you can hit him in the face, you can down and dirty, and we will back you 100%. You can just, you know, beat them, you know, like, they were just like, and this is like when I was like a kid, you know, like a little kid, you know, and I didn't fight with anybody, but they did tell me that was the one time it was okay to fight, and I would not be wrong, like, that was okay. And then fast forward, like, I'm going to college, and my mom is like, you know, I didn't have a lot of boyfriends. I actually didn't have any boyfriends in high school. I didn't.
That was my next question. Neither did I.
And so my mom, they said, you know, they were kind of like sitting in the living room with me, and my dad was like, yeah, you know, you can date or marry anyone you want as long as he's Jewish. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, yeah, and as long as he's black. And I'm like, black Jew, right, got it, okay. So,
Lenny Kravitz.
Right, exactly. I'm like, can you call Lenny Kravitz? And I don't know the other one. The only one I know. So.
But other than that, there was no, like, no, you know you're really black, or you're really black and white, or you have to check this box.
No,
but that doesn't matter.
Absolutely, absolutely not. They, I think they left me a lot to formulate my own identity. They definitely, it was very, like, I traveled a lot overseas before I reached the age of 18. I was very lucky, and it was very important to my dad that I go to countries that had to do with my origins. So I went to Russia and Belarus and Lithuania before, and I think I was like 16. And then when I was like 19 or so, we went to Jamaica, even though my family is not Jamaican at all. My dad wanted me to see a predominantly black country, so he's like, we'll go to, you know, my parents have all these ties to Jamaica, and so he's like, we're gonna go back to Jamaica. And so, you know, he's like, you know, even though we're not, like, you know, ethnically from Jamaica, he's like, you need to go here and see a country where there's black people, like, predominantly, and not white people. So he was very adamant about that. My dad is kind of like a feminist, so he's very, he's really supportive of, like, women, and all of his friends are black. Like, he has a lot of black friends.
How did he get this way, coming from his family?
I really don't know. Actually, my mom's older brother and my dad are best friends, and so that's how my parents ended up getting married, actually.
Okay.
And so I think it was just a product of my dad. Like, he's kind of this hippie guy, and like he ended up hanging out, you know, with my uncle, and you know, my aunt was like in line with all these like Black Panther wannabes, and he kind of hung out with them, and he was like the cool white dude, you know, and he just kind of, he makes friends with everyone real easily. He's real laid back and chill, so people just kind of like gravitate towards him. So I think it was just always easy for him to fit in where he wanted. So, you know.
Sounds cool. Okay, Michigan, did you feel like you went to a black orientation?
No, actually.
No.
Well, yes, okay, well, hold on, yes and no. Okay, wait, I don't know, did they have the bridge program when you went there? Okay, so, alright. So, I don't know when they started it, so I mean, I don't know. Okay, so there is this program now called Bridge, and I guess it's like, okay, they say it's not for black people, but like it really is. So, like, there was like 40 of us, and I think there were like 2 white people and like 3 Hispanic people, and the rest of us were black. Basically, it's for people who they feel like need some sort of like kind of pre-adjustment to college. So like, AKA, you didn't do the best in high school, so we need you to like, you know, make sure you're gonna like fit in at Michigan's like rigorous like, campus or whatever. And so I did this program. I had to do this program, whatever, and it was the first time that I really like spent like a lot of time with black people. And when I went home, because I, you know, even though I kind of had these black friends, they were still kind of white, and we kind of,
right,
you know, we hung out with white people. We went to this white school. We all talked properly, you know, all that crap. So, you know, like, you know, so they weren't like these kind of like hood people, like from Detroit hood, you know, like that's who I met when I went to this program, you know. And
what was that like?
And I never met anybody like that. And like in high school, you know, these guys were paying attention to me, and suddenly I had like these guys from Detroit, like, yo, shorty, you know, all this stuff, you know, and I wasn't used to that. Like, it was like, you know, like it was totally weird for me to be the center of any guy's attention, to be surrounded by all these like, all at once have all these guys who were interested in me, and all these girls who like hated me, you know, for like, you know, being who I was. And like I hung out with all these guys, and I kind of like got this bad reputation, like, you know, for being like easy, even though I wasn't like doing anything. I just hung out with guys, you know. So I only had like 2 or 3 like good female friends in this program. It was like a 3-month program, I think, 2.5 months, something like that, like the whole summer. And so like it was like, yeah, summer semester.
So you lived there, yeah, like East Quad or something?
Yeah, we lived in Markley, and so I love that I can say the dorms that you know.
Yeah, I know.
It's so great. I haven't met like a Michigan alumni in so long. Go blue. We lived in Markley and we went to classes. We took like, I think we had like 3 or 4 classes, and it was just basically like being in school, but then like on the weekends we had like these events, like we would go to like Comerica Park after it got built and like go and, you know, check out, you know.
Like that was recent.
Yeah, right? They take us to baseball games or do these other events for us to like kind of like team build or whatever. And like, I don't know, I heard the other day that Michigan, I mean, I think our black percentage now is like, what was it, like 8%, 9%? Like we're pretty close to double digits now, I think, if not quite into double digits. I think we're doing pretty good by comparison to some of the other schools.
Yeah.
But after Bridge was over, I did not like hang out with black people at all. I moved into Alice Lloyd and I hung out with all white people. My roommate was white, all of our friends were white. I don't think I had, other than like the 2 or 3 good friends that I had from the Bridge program, I like didn't have any black friends at all. I dated the first boyfriend I had in college. I dated him for 2 years. He was white. Yeah, so it's kind of weird because I went from being intensely in this very intense black focused environment to like the complete opposite. Like even, and it's weird because like even in school, like in high school, like I was around all these people of different ethnicities, even, you know, even if everyone was kind of proper or whatever.
Right.
And all of a sudden there were no Indian, I didn't hang out with Indian people, I didn't hang out with Asian people in any way, no black people, just all white people. It was really weird. And I was like the token friend. It was really bizarre.
But don't you think that's because like those 3 months of Bridge couldn't have combated all, not combated, but like that still, like that felt odd to you?
Yeah.
And also because there's only 8% and that was like at best at the time, like how were you gonna, unless they put you, I think they have special places they put black people, and I think it's called Bursley, but anyway.
Yeah, Bursley.
Unless you were there and you were like African American studies.
I actually got out of living in Bursley by joining the Lloyd Hall Scholars. That's why I lived in Lloyd, because like I wanted to live on, I didn't want to live
They
on
put me in Bursley too. Yeah. And I lived with a handicapped girl and Betsy Barber and like helped her take her contact lenses out of her eyes.
Very nice of you. Yeah, like all of my black friends did get stuck on North in Bursley for sure. Like they definitely were up there, and in Cousins, a couple of them in Cousins, like for sure.
And my mom would like went and she was like, this is a race issue, and my daughter, and she wasn't like she doesn't belong with these people, but she was like, all of her classes are not here, all of her friends from this high school are in this other dorm. How is it that my child got placed over here?
Right.
And they were like, oh, excuse me, we'll accommodate you.
Yeah, it's completely random that we place people. Just like Bridge program is for everyone, clearly, you know, like it's the same deal. I didn't meet or hang out with a lot of black people until I was a senior in college, and I started dating my current boyfriend who's black, and I met like all of his friends, and like he hung out with some white people too, but he definitely had black friends and hung out in black circles, and so like I definitely got more into black culture. He likes to joke that he like made me more black because like, you know, it's like I made you cool. Like, he's very Afrocentric, so not necessarily, I mean, I shouldn't say that, he's not very Afrocentric. I think his parents are Caribbean, and so I think he just has a very strong sense of place and like who he is, and like a very strong sense of identity that I didn't necessarily have like in that way. So he's like, you know, he was very well read, like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King biographies, and you know, all familiar with these different movements and these different things and genocides, and you know, I'm like, not like I didn't know what George Fur was, but he was a political science major, so he had like the ins and outs of everything, and I'm like, you know, and he's like, and this is wrong, and you have to understand why people are being oppressed, and he's very, you know, actually I have a slam poem that I wrote about him that I'm going to upload later, and it actually like makes mention of like all this stuff about how like he's very strong that way, so it definitely pulled me towards that side where I hadn't been that way before, and like kind of skewed my consciousness in a different way, I suppose. So
if someone asks you what you are, what do you say?
Best question ever. Depends on who's asking. I have a tendency to say I'm black.
Have you always had that tendency, or is this boyfriend? Or
I think I've always had that tendency. My friends will say I'm black. Like my black friends will be like, "Oh, Sarah, she's black," whatever, you know. I actually had an argument with someone in college when I was very fiercely defending the fact that I was mixed and that was my identity, and I'm gonna tell people I'm mixed, and he's like, "But you have brown skin, and that's all people are gonna see, and they're not gonna care what you say you are. They're gonna see what they think, and that's all. You have to accept it." Like, and he was like telling me I couldn't define myself.
I feel like I know this guy, and he did the same thing to me.
Right. So I definitely have a tendency to say that I'm black, but I will also say that I'm mixed. But one of the reasons I used to do it more, but like especially like with white people, they'll be like, "Oh, how was that for you? Like growing up, was that really hard for you?" Like, I want to like, you know, write like my life story or something. Like, I know like, you know, they're trying to be nice, but it's just like that's a really awkward question. So finally, like for a while, they'd be like, "Oh no, you know, it's not that bad," because usually like this would be like maybe slightly older people asking me, and I didn't want to be like rude or anything, and so I'd be like, "Oh, you know, yeah, it was okay. I didn't really have any problems them some like really vanilla answer to like appease them.
Right.
But then like after a while I got really indignant that it was happening like really frequently. So I'd be like, I don't know, how was it for you growing up? Was it hard for you growing up? Like, why don't you tell me your life story? You know, and that would be my response. And I know I kind of came off like asshole-ish, but I was like, I didn't care, you know? And now I had a teacher in high school who she one day sat me down and she's like, I don't understand why you do this half and half thing. Like, you're not half black and half white. You're 100% black and 100% white. You're 100% woman. You're 100% Jewish. Like, why do people divide themselves into these? It's weird. She's like, you're all of what you are. Your genome like doesn't work that way. She's like, if they take your blood, it's not like, you know, half.
Right.
She's like, it doesn't work that way. So ever since then, I actually have taken to saying, yeah, I'm 100% black. I'm 100% white. I don't do half and half anymore. So.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't come to that same place, but it's, as I've said it more and more, it's like I don't want to split myself up into halves.
Right.
It's like I either say I'm black and white, or I say what my parents are, and know that people come away with that saying, oh, she's black. But whatever, right. And as much as I'm convinced that like my black and white identity is very valid, but it's still kind of like the first thing I would think to say is black sometimes. It's just interesting.
What's interesting to me is I know one other girl who's mixed who has a black mother, and she kind of does that too. But everyone else that I know who's mixed have white mothers and black mothers. More common, right? And they all like gravitate the other way. Like either they kind of like shirk the question, or they like won't really say, or they'll be like very adamant. They're like, well, my father, and like they don't just say my father's black and my mother's white. They're like, my mother is Irish and Polish and Scottish, and my father is like Creole and Native American. And I'm like, okay, so your mom is white and your dad's black, because that's what you're telling me. I kind of had to like try not to offend people by like taking away from what they were, because in my mind, like, I mean, yeah, you can break down who you are, but at the end of the day, I mean, if you're talking about race and ethnicity, black, everyone sees black and white, so you know, you're white, black, okay, fine, you're the same as me, okay, great, we got it.
And I find that interesting because I find that a lot of white people don't really get into Irish and German, and my white family doesn't anyway. It's just like, we're from Michigan. A white mother really, just as much as our black moms perhaps, mine definitely, was like, you're my daughter and you're black. Whereas I think a white woman would be like, you're my child, and you're, you know, like, would fight harder for at least a mixed identity so they'd be included.
I think you definitely have a point with that, and I'm thinking like specifically in the couple instances that I know, the fathers aren't especially present, and
often.
So and think that like black identity is kind of missing, because it's like all they know is like, okay, my dad, you know, he's not all I had. The only person who raised me was my white mom, you know, and that's all I have to identify with, and. I don't know, like I always like, it's really interesting. I know a couple people who are like white women who are interested in marrying black men or dating black men, and I always tell them this really random, like if you do marry someone black and you have a mixed child, you need to look up how to do black hair. You have to look up how to do the hair. It's like,
Don't just not do it.